everybody, and welcome to the Aggieville Alleycats podcast, where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. I'm Ace Edwards, right alongside
Connor Baltazar.
And welcome to this week's weekly recap, which will actually be the last recap for a while, releasing on a Monday, because our schedules, also known as my schedule and me being difficult, just kind of made it to where Sunday was an easier day for these first 2 weeks, but we are going to move back to our original non-rev schedule, which is record Thursday, release Friday. So, I guess double up the Alleycats content this week if you want to look at it that way. But before we get into the show, we do want to thank Grandma.
Thank you, Grandma.
Grandma. That's it. Just Grandma.
There's no supporters link.
So. The supporters link died. I think there's a subscription link now, but who knows how that works. But for this weekly recap, we do have 3 new portal commits, and we are also going to go over where a bunch of former K-State Wildcats ended up, and then, of course, covering the women's basketball team. But let's just dive straight into the brand new portal commits, and the first of which was a highly touted recruit coming out of high school that K-State was actually heavily involved in. And he was actually he was a recruit that we covered on one of our previous year's episodes, and that was Jaysean Ross, the defensive end / edge rusher out of Liberty North, so adjacent to where my old stomping grounds were. It's where my grandmother lived. But picking up Jaysean Ross, he committed to Alabama out of high school and then chooses K-State in the portal. He'll be coming in as a redshirt freshman, listed at 6'3", probably 220, 230, somewhere in there. And he's rated pretty highly on 3 as a transfer, but he was a high 4-star coming out of high school. So, and honestly, he's close enough to his high school tape where we could just use that. So, Connor, what do you think about Jaysean Ross?
Well, yeah, I like that you mentioned more about his high school status, because I mean, with Jaysean Ross, I think that's honestly more valuable, I think, than it would be to really overanalyze anything he did as a true freshman at Alabama, because I mean that's just not easy, like, to break in, even in a post Nick Saban Alabama. Like, true freshmen just aren't really breaking through. He played in 1 game and he got 5 snaps, and he did actually get 2 pressures in those 5 snaps. So he had 3 pass rush reps and 2 pressures, which I do think is probably a bit unsustainable pressure rate. But regardless, still decent for his 5 snaps that he had against Mercer. But otherwise, Jaysean Ross, he's a freak athlete, is what he is. He is incredibly strong. It was someone that I think really did give K-State a really solid look before Bama came calling out of high school, which I think is telling, given that he entered the portal and really nothing happened in his recruitment until he just randomly announced that he was signing with K-State. Yeah. Which a lot of times when stuff like that happens, that means that guys kind of know where they're going once they portal. But now K-State ends up with Jaysean Ross just a year after they would have preferred to have him. So effectively, I am treating him as if he were coming in as like a true freshman in my mind. I think he's listed as like a high 3-star transfer, but he was like a mid-level 4-star as a high school recruit. I think he's still has all that athletic talent. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how we use him, because he's pretty versatile as well, because we could use him as an edge rusher or as a sandbacker, maybe a bit of both. I'm not 100% sure where we want him at yet, but he's going to have some versatility, so we'll at least have some flexibility with how we use him.
Yeah, and I think that I don't want to call it the lazy comp, but the easy one, at least coming out of high school, is very similar to Jordan Allen, except for trade a little bit of the strength for a little bit more speed. And that's why there's been discussions about what position, you sort of alluded to it, what position Jaysean Ross is going to play. Because, I mean, you look at our defensive end room, first off, the defensive end room is quietly very, very stacked and ridiculous. you still have Toby Osensami, Jordan Allen, Ryan Davis, Chidi Obiizor,
Travis Bates as
Travis
well.
Bates, who I feel like just sort of fell under the radar. Cody Stufflebean will be back. So it's a very loaded defensive end room. But we only have two true Sam linebackers. And that would be Rex Van Wy, who's been playing more at will than he has Sam, and Des Purnell. So I honestly really like the idea of having Jayshon Ross develop into that Sam linebacker role, because other than Des Purnell, we sort of don't have, and even Des Purnell isn't really the prototype for a Sam linebacker. He's just really, really aggressive and good. Like, if Des Purnell was in Rex Van Wy's body, he'd be like a first-round draft pick. But that's kind of what you're getting with Jayshon Ross, except for without the freakishly long arms.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at him. I mean, he does kind of have that NFL prototype build and athleticism to him, and he also one, I guess, benefit that we get of a year of Alabama for him is that he's got a year of Bama strength and conditioning as well, because he got to Bama and is now leaving. He's leaving Bama 20 pounds heavier than he got there. So that's a little bit less work that we had to do to get him to where we wanted him to be. Granted, if we end up, having him play some linebacker, then maybe he just sheds some of that weight anyways. But I guess it depends on how well he plays with the weight on. But I don't know. This is still a really great ad, because I mean, we would have been over the moon to get Jayshon Ross out of high school. So I really think this should be treated about the same.
Yeah, I agree. So welcome to the family, Jayshon Ross. When that first depth chart releases, I will be very curious to see where he is listed, or when the first roster releases. Imagine they just list him as like athlete or something.
Yeah, that's been getting a bit more popular these last couple of years to list players like that. It doesn't really seem like a Kleiman thing to do. I don't have any issue with it, but I don't feel like Kleiman's going to do that. I don't know why, other than just it being him, being cranky about it, I guess. I don't know. I don't know Kleiman's. I don't know what his reaction would be to that, but
that's all I got. That's all. But the next commit is on the offensive side of the ball, and there was quite a bit of angst in the fan base looking for another starting offensive tackle with Easton Kilty going to the NFL draft. He'll probably end up being a mid to late round draft pick just based off of pass blocking upside. But you want to talk about prototypes, and I know that we don't really explain what the word prototype means. It just basically means what you think of when you think of a certain position or a certain player type. Brandon Sneh is the prototype left tackle because he has like an 82-inch wingspan, I think it was.
Yeah. Brandon Sneh definitely falls in that category. I also think of like prototype, like it's like if you're around sports a lot, like you just hear prototype and that just like makes sense, but you don't necessarily, it's not an intuitive definition. Like it means what you say, like kind of what you think of, and also means, I think, maybe like a product where you're not 100% sure if it's ready. I think that's a great way to look at it as well. Where we see a corner like Jaden Rowe come in, I'd say that he's a prototype, but an unfinished product as well. And I think prototype sometimes goes hand in hand with those things. Prototypical size, I think, is like the more. I think when we say it that way, it makes a bit more sense. Or prototypical athleticism, but Brandon Sneh definitely falls into both of those categories in terms of size and athleticism, because he's, I believe he was listed at Wagner as like 6'7", 320. On three, this listing him as 6'6", 320. He has, like Ace said, a crazy wingspan. But the big thing with Brandon Sneh is that We definitely went out and we were able to beat some other power programs for him. I believe he visited Cal and Colorado as well. So a pretty solid win there. But he is remarkably athletic and agile for a player of his size. And I'm liking that we're going for some athletes out of tackle, which, for Carver Willis, I mean, like, we gave him plenty of criticism, but he was definitely very athletic. Nothing else. I mean, the mind immediately goes to that clip of him keeping up with DJ Giddens.
Did he outrun DJ?
He just about did, I think. Which I don't know, maybe DJ was coasting or not, but like at any speed, that is like at least worth mentioning. But Brandon Sneh, he's granted from a lower level of FCS at Wagner. They're not like they're not like the NDSU's and South Dakota States of FCS, but regardless, the athleticism really jumps off the page for Brandon Sneh. And I think we're basically looking at him and saying this guy is incredibly athletic. If we can refine his technique, because athletically he's probably already there, but if we can get him more technically sound, like this is probably a plug and play starter with a really high ceiling. Just a low floor, though, is the problem.
Yeah, and I do think that him and Pastore are probably going to be in a competition for that left tackle spot. It all depends on health, but I will say that Sneh probably has the inside track on that just because of his physical gifts. And if you look at PFF, and granted, PFF grades against FCS competition, he does grade out. His pass blocking grade was like a 92 or something, and his run blocking grade was a 77. So that's why I slot him more as a left tackle than a right tackle, even though he does have that sort of mauler size that you look for in a right tackle. But yeah, you said it before, he was chased by Colorado, visited Colorado and California, apparently was contacted by Florida. So he was getting a lot of interest, and K-State was the winner for his services. So it's very similar to the recruitment of Easton Kilty last year, but sort of in the opposite direction, where Kilty, his big thing was sort of physical limitations, but very, very, very technically sound. Whereas Sneh is the precise opposite, where you're not even really gambling because has a track record of at least being consistently good at the FCS level, but he's just so physically gifted. And I don't think we've had that, like a truly physically gifted left tackle starting. We have two on roster right now who could slot into that, in Caden Massey and Gus Hawkins. I think Hawkins is probably going to be the left whenever they both develop. But
yeah, no, I'm with you there. And I think one other thing on Sneh, I can't verify this. I just remember reading it somewhere that he was a converted tight end once he got to college as well. So that also, if that's true, which again, I don't know, but if it is true, that would also explain maybe why he's not as advanced technically as you may expect for starting left tackle. But hopefully an offseason with Connor Riley will get him up to speed on that. So, but regardless, recruiting tackle in the portal is one of the most contentious positions to recruit at. I mean, I really, if you're looking at the portal, I mean, the top most difficult positions to recruit are probably like quarterback, edge rusher, and corner.
It's probably corner and tackle.
Yeah, but I forgot to mention tackle, but it's in that group. But I mean, those are, I think a lot of coaches would probably say are like the positions that can take you the furthest. And I mean, if you have a great quarterback, like Casey has with Avery Johnson, you have to have a great left tackle to pair with them. So hopefully Brandon Sneh can be that guy, or at the very least can push guys in the room to get better as well, because he can be useful and a net positive for K-State, whether he starts or not, just depending on his effort in spring practices and training camp.
Yeah, so this is both a literal and metaphorically massive pickup for K-State. And the third pickup that we're going to mention, and the last pickup that we have as of this point, is the transfer from New Mexico, and that is Caleb Medford, who, funnily enough, this is the second time that K-State has had someone transfer to a school and then have that given school get someone back. The first one was, we'll talk about it later, but it was Trey Spivey for Gunnar Maldonado. And this one is Keegan Johnson for Caleb Medford. And Caleb Medford, your first thought is probably, or at least most people's first thought is, oh, yay, a New Mexico receiver who is like decently productive, but not amazing, which I'm not going to fault you for for thinking that. But he does have the 6'3" size, and he does have a high school recruiting pedigree. He originally committed to TCU, played a few years there before transferring to New Mexico, and then transferred again, this time to K-State. And this is sort of a message where the message that's being sent, at least to me, is we want to get significantly taller in the wide receiver room, because our only quote unquote tall consistent target last year was Trey Spivey, who was 6'4". I think Jace is quote unquote 6 foot, probably closer to 5'11", 5'10". J-Jack was 6 foot. Keegan was 6'1". So like we didn't have that tall receiver, and now we have like 3.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is that last year's receiver room was still taller than what we've seen in the past for K-State as well. I mean, after 6 years of Phillip Brooks, anybody seems tall. But I mean, really, K-State, for the most part, at least in my lifetime, with a few exceptions, like most of the great receivers have been pretty short. Like Tyler Lockett was like 5'10" and very skinny. So there's that. But no, Medford, this is, I think as far as quality goes, frankly, I think if we can get roughly Keegan Johnson level production out of him with maybe a bit more reliability in terms of health, I'll be pretty happy with that. I'm not expecting him to come out and be the number 1 receiver for us next year, or really even the 2 or the 3. I'm thinking he's going to be a rotation guy that can try and give us some splash plays, which, I mean, his numbers from last year do kind of lend themselves, and even from the year before, they lend themselves to not necessarily being a high reception total guy, but a lot. He's going to be making some big plays. I mean, he averages 18.5 yards per catch over his career. And last year, he only had 18 catches, but he had 336 yards. So he put together some pretty big numbers. And in a lot of games, he was putting up some games where he had receptions of 30 plus. Didn't quite crack a 50-yarder last year, but had multiple in the 40s. So this, I think really, Keegan's leaving here. He was our number 2, and he's probably going to be the number 2 or number 1 at New Mexico. Medford, I think he was the 3 at New Mexico, and he'll probably be the 3 or the 4 here. I think I'm going to say it'll be the 4 probably. I think Jaron Bradley probably beats him out, but yeah, we get taller with this pickup, and I can't say that I'm like displeased or anything with this pickup, but I think Tibbs is a better pickup. Jaron Bradley's a better pickup, but Medford is still somebody you want to have on roster. So that way, if you're dealing with health issues in your receiver room, like K-State has seemingly been completely unable to avoid the last few years, then you're going to want to have guys like Caleb Medford that do have some experience and some production, admittedly at a lower level, but he still has some production. And this isn't, a Dante Cephas situation either. Because Cephas, I think we were really hoping that he would come in and be the number 1 or number 2 guy, and that just what he was. This Caleb Medford we're anticipating is probably going to be the number 4 receiver, and if he gives us number 4 receiver production, that's fine.
Yeah. What the people did not realize just happened was an absolute disaster class, technically, for me, where camera stopped working, microphone stopped working, microphone started working, heater kicked on. So shout out to Connor for being very consistent with powering through that.
If nothing else, I can filibuster. So
yeah, the technical disaster class, but I think that Medford's probably going to get the same amount of snaps as Jaden Jackson, sans being in the doghouse at some points of the year. I mean, maybe he ends up there. I don't know. I don't know the man. But I think it's a solid pickup for a receiver room that at this point probably just needs bodies to be complete. But yeah, so welcome to the family, Caleb Medford. Now, do want to go through and just briefly talk about the K-State transfers who ended up finding a new place to call home. We're going to go from most recent backwards. So Taquan, and probably just give like a sentence about it for what we actually think. Taquan Roberson, the backup quarterback from this year, transfers to Buffalo. That makes sense.
That's probably the level he needs to be at.
Yeah, I mean, he made one good throw against Colorado to keep us in that game, and he will be forever remembered for it. But Buffalo is probably the best place for him at this point.
Yeah, if he's wanting to start, which I think he can, then a MAC school, that's probably the place to be.
Yeah. McKendry Steiger, who I didn't know was in the portal, apparently transferred to Old Dominion. Again, that stings a little, just because of safety depth, but I mean, we got so many bodies that he was probably like, hey, you're not playing here.
Yeah, I think that may be where he was at. I think he's in his last year eligibility as well. So he may just be wanting to play. And I think there is a K-State connection at Old Dominion as well. Pretty sure Blake Seiler, who was the co-defensive coordinator in Bills last year and was initially retained for like 2 months when Kleiman got here. Then he left to go be the DC at Old Dominion. And I think he's been there ever since. So there's a K-State connection there. I don't know if that actually like played a role at all in this, but that's just where my mind went.
It's interesting. And Justin Wolf, who literally just looks like Giga Chad, he transfers to Western Kentucky. I know nothing about him, and I'm not going to pretend like I do.
All I remember about him is that he was a FCS tight end who was known as a blocking guy and walked on here this year, and I don't think he played.
I don't remember him ever being on the field.
Yeah, I remember him committing because he did the whole put out a tweet thing, and I think people initially thought he was a scholarship guy, but he's not. So I think that's why his commitment blew up a little bit more than normal for a walk-on transfer. It just caught the wave at the right time. But yeah, now he's off to Western Kentucky. I have nothing else to say on Justin Wolf.
Keegan Johnson ends up transferring to New Mexico, which is a brutal fall because he probably wanted to be the wide receiver 1 or 2 again. I didn't expect him to fall so far down to New Mexico, but that's probably just him being hit with the injury bug harder than just about anyone.
Yeah, I do think he's more talented than where he fell to, but I think we've said it on this show before. Availability is ability, and Keegan has really, really, really struggled to stay healthy. And I really liked him at K-State. I always wanted him to break out, and he kept showing flashes, but just couldn't quite stay healthy. which is really a shame because I think otherwise he really could have had a solid K-State career. And I think locker room wise, he's someone that would have been nice to keep, but with the new roster limits, I understand why he's going a different direction. But yeah, this was, I think, a brutal fall for him. I think he deserved a bit better than New Mexico.
Yeah. Trey Spivey transfers in conference, goes to Arizona. This was basically we're calling it a trade for Trey Spivey for Gunnar Maldonado. And we were sad to see Trey go. I still am, just because of he could have been so good here. And if he ends up, I'm just happy he didn't go to Iowa State, because Iowa State was in his Final Four. And if he broke out at Iowa State, I may have just walked into the Pacific Ocean and never be seen again. I did. Give me the beat, boys, and free myself. But he ends up going to Arizona. Probably pushes for wide receiver 1 or 2 snaps there, with Ted McMillan declaring for the draft. But
yeah, I mean, he should be getting a lot of opportunities at Arizona because they were not very good this year. I think they had a bit of a talent exodus as well, other than Noah Fafita. So they should be pretty pass happy next year. So he should have his share of opportunities, and we'll be seeing him as well. I think in week 3, if I remember correctly, because we now have the return non-conference game where we play a conference team. So
it's still so strange.
Yeah, still really weird, but that's what we're doing. But yeah, sad to see Trey go. That's a kind of the trade, I guess, so to speak, between him and Maldonado. Maldonado definitely fills an immediate need, and Trey hurts to lose. I'd say this year it's a wash. Going forward, it's going to depend on what Trey Spivey does in his college career to look for. And it also, I guess, depends on how well Maldonado is playing for us next year, because he could, be like a revelation for us at safety. And I'm expecting him to be a starter and really help our back end communication. So if he's able to fix that and help kick the defense into gear, then, we have the potential to win that air quotes trade.
Yeah. The next one was Terry Kirksey going to UConn. He could never find the field here, despite a litany of linebacker injuries. So take that for what you will.
Yeah, I really liked his film out of junior college, but it just never really materialized, which is unfortunate. But UConn had a pretty solid year this year. So maybe I connected there through Taekwon. But I'm hoping that he can have a successful last year.
Jordan Dunbar ends up transferring to Bowling Green. That's whatever.
That's where RJ Garcia ended up as well.
True.
After last year, which he was hurt this year. But I think RJ Garcia's brother is now at Bowling Green as well.
Package deal.
Mm-hmm.
Donovan Ryman, who I believe was your number 2 rated recruit in his class, ends up transferring to Louisiana Tech. And this one would hurt if our defensive end room was not as ridiculous as it currently is.
Yeah, it makes me a bit sad because I really do think that Donovan Ryman had a high ceiling and seemed really great. I loved his film out of high school, but he just didn't quite put it together here at K-State. And yeah, you're right. Like, this would hurt way more if we were just destitute of defensive end, but like we kind of have like an embarrassment of riches in terms of our defensive ends and edge rushers right now. So I'm not too hurt by this, but I'm hopeful that he's able to find his way onto the field, because I mean, we had a loaded room this year and he just never really was able to get onto the field.
Yeah. Then the last one that has committed was actually the first one to commit somewhere else, and that's Carver Willis transferring to the University of Washington, who allegedly got it. If you want an object lesson in how much a starting caliber tackle costs in the NIL era, Carver Willis' alleged NIL value is like $400,000. And Carver Willis was like a bottom half of the Big 12 starting right tackle.
Yeah. It's pretty shocking because, I mean, Carver was a frequent target of criticism. Although he did fluctuate. Like, I'm not going to say he was always a liability because he really did have his good games at times. But was just wildly inconsistent for the most part, and also was illegally downfield way more often than you would expect. Like, I don't know what he's doing down there sometimes, but I can't remember what game it was. But
it was the Tulane game where he robbed Joe Jackson of the touchdown.
Yes, that's it. But there was a home game where I think he might have robbed someone of a touchdown as well. I can't remember who.
Carver Willis activities.
Yeah, I don't know, just out to get his pass catching teammates, I guess. But yeah, I mean, good for him to get $400,000 because I don't think we were going to pay him that much because no, and but good for him regardless. But hopefully, I think we should be able to backfill at right tackle pretty effectively.
Yeah. So those are all the guys that have committed. The only other one that I want to mention, because we will never, ever talk about him again because we're probably never going to do another segment like this again, is Dante Thomas, who will forever be remembered as the guy who killed someone in his first title highlight and we never saw again.
Yeah, I was really hoping that Strap Thomas would stick around for no other reason than like it just feels nice to have like a hard hitting safety on your team. But
we have Jack Roberts.
Sure, but it wasn't meant to be with Dante Thomas, and some of these are tough, are just tough luck with the house settlement. Like, there's guys that you otherwise may prefer to keep that you may be looking at and saying, maybe we need to push them out the door because there's just not enough room.
Yeah, because, 105, no walk-ons, which is a change from 85 with walk-ons. So, sometimes you're going to have to make sacrifices to...
For what it's worth, I do think you can have walk-ons, but you just can't have more than 105 guys on roster.
Okay.
Because as I remember hearing, you can have you can still set it at 85 scholarships and slowly work your way up.
Because I think that's what the SEC is going to do.
I'm pretty sure, because it's a huge investment. I don't think people realize exactly how much scholarships for student athletes actually cost. It's a lot. It's a lot of money. So scaling up to adding another 20 scholarships with the drop of a hat.
Just in football,
that's at least I think $2 million a year, probably. Because I think each person takes at least 100,000. When you take into account their living expenses, their tuition, their books, and then they get stipends as well. So scholarships are really expensive. Which if you've ever paid for college tuition, you would know that already. But they're even more. It's even more for student athletes, especially because you also have to feed them. I think 2 or 3 times a day. So it's a lot of money. Which that's a bit of a side tangent, but I think that you can still have walk-ons, but it's just that it's going to be a lot more difficult to manage your roster now because you're just going to have way less room. And it's going to be especially bad, I think, for the next probably couple of years of guys that would have been walk-ons that we would have taken as a walk-on that are now just we're just not going to have a spot for those guys anymore, which really sucks. But that is what it is.
Yeah, and we'll probably have to do an entire summer episode, which I know summer episodes are going to be so much fun with you studying for the bar this year. And
yeah, I can't wait.
Well, then you can offer quote, you can offer legal opinions without getting immediately executed by the law school.
That true to
Opinions, not advice.
opinions, yeah.
But yeah, that's probably like a summer off-season episode. And I think we've said that a few times now.
Yeah.
Because I think you and I are probably, I mean, we are of, weirdly enough, this is the case. This is one of those rare cases where we are probably the most qualified to talk about a given issue.
Yeah. Pretty unusual. But,
yeah. Very rare things happening nowadays. But now we talked about football. Now we can move on to the women's basketball team. Starting off with their first matchup up against a Utah who was actually ranked going into this matchup, ranked 22nd in the country. They were 12-2 going into this, undefeated 3-0 in conference play. We were going to Salt Lake City, and we destroyed them by 24. Destroying a ranked team by 24 on the road, and the only time that the game felt even remotely close was in the second quarter when we gave up a little bit of a run. I mean, it's beyond hyperbole at this point.
Yeah, I mean, this was a just fantastic win. This was one of the first games I've been like genuinely nervous for in a little bit, and yeah, like you said, outside of a little bit of the second quarter, this was like A+ performance across the board, really. Because I mean, Utah, really good team, and particularly really dangerous as shooters, because they had some multiple players that were among the best in the country in 3-point shooting. I mean, to this game, and as a team, they won 3 of 19.
16%.
Yeah, so the K-State defense, which at this point really does have a pretty vaunted reputation, they stepped up to the task this time. So huge win.
And you can take the starters for this one.
Yeah, so we'll start with Serena Sundell. She had 15 points in 30 minutes in this one, 7 of 15 from the field, 1 of 3 on her free throws, 3 rebounds, 5 assists to 6 turnovers, and a block. So not her best day as a distributor, particularly with those turnover numbers. We've gotten so used to seeing her get like 10 assists a game. So a little bit jarring to see that number, but it gets better. Ayoka Lee was second on the team in points. She finished with 14 in 17 minutes, so not quite at her peak efficiency where she's getting more points than minutes played, but close. So 6 of 12 from the field, 2 of 2 on her free throws, 6 rebounds, and then 2 fouls, 2 assists, a turnover, 2 blocks, and a steal. So she stuffs the stat sheet in this game.
Nope, didn't get a 3.
Okay, yeah, I guess she didn't.
We could pretend she did.
Sure, yeah. Congrats, Yogi.
The Ayoka 3 strikes again. She is now 2 for 2 on her career.
Yep, but Jalen Glenn's next here on the list. She actually had a double-double, Jalen Glenn did in this game. She had 11 points and 10 rebounds, 4 of 7 from the field, 3 of 4 from 3, and then had 3 fouls, 5 assists, 2 turnovers, and a pair of steals. She did all that in 32 minutes. Tamara Poindexter had a solid day as well. She played 32 minutes and had 11 points, 4 of 9 from the field, 3 of 7 from 3. And then she had 3 rebounds, 2 fouls, 2 assists, a block, and a steal. And then Zai Walker rounds out the starting lineup. She finished with 8 points, 36 minutes played, 4 of 5 from the field. Her lone miss was a 3-point attempt. Then 2 rebounds, 2 fouls, 6 assists to 0 turnovers, and a steal. So a really efficient day for Zion Walker, which she's been a little bit quiet as a distributor as of late due to the emergence of Serena Sundell, just on the warpath when it comes to facilitating. But every starter played pretty well in this game.
I don't have a single complaint with any of the starters' play. And Jalen Glenn going 3 of 4. I'm pretty sure her one miss wasn't at the elbow. If she gets the ball at the elbow at this point, I'm just assuming the ball was going in, because like I think she's missed like one of those.
No, it's been unbelievable. If she gets her spot, like there's a very good chance she is making that shot, because like this year she has just been lethal from 3.
Yeah. Speaking of lethal from 3, we can start with the bench players. That's Taryn Side starting off with. She played 22 minutes, 2 of 3 from the field. All of those were 3-point attempts. Got 1 rebound, 1 assist, and 1 turnover for 6 total points. Then the rest of the bench, 2 points each. Amani Lester played 15 minutes, 1 of 2 from the field, but did get 5 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, 2 blocks, 3 fouls. So, she actually played pretty well. These last 2 games, the ones that both took place in Utah, Amani showed a lot of growth, which it was kind of like overnight too, where she went from like, maybe Kennedy Taylor should be getting those minutes, to where, I mean, just in this Utah trip, she was on a heater where she decided that she was going to push for that second post position. She's not there yet. Kennedy Taylor is still really, really good, but Amani is really making that push. And then Gisela played 8 minutes, 1 of 2 from the field, 0 of 1 from 3. I think it was actually short, which is rare for her. 1 foul, 2 points. Kennedy Taylor, speaking of, 8 minutes, 1 of 5 from the field, 5 rebounds, 3 of them offensive, 1 steal and 2 fouls for 2 points. Then Liza logged 3 minutes. That's it.
Kennedy has been very inconsistent offensively this year, which when she's on, and she really, in terms of positioning herself, actually is pretty consistent in that regard, but she's just been struggling with finishing consistently. And if she could get a bit more consistent at putting the ball through the basket when she gets the chance, then I think she'd see her minutes go up a little bit more than just playing 8, which is a little bit lower than you'd think. But Amani had almost double the minutes as Kennedy Taylor in this game.
And it's hard to argue against that happening, especially with how she played.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I've at times been pretty frustrated with how Amani has played this season and wondered why she's getting the playing time that she is. But the last couple of games have really been a bright spot for Amani Lester. And then Kennedy Taylor also, I do think it's funny that even though she is missing a lot of bunnies around the rim, she is, if nothing else, padding her offensive rebound stats.
Yes.
Like she went 1 of 5 and she had 3 offensive rebounds. I think those were all from his layups. At least she's doing something with the misses, but it's just funny.
Also, we don't like complaining about the refs, especially in a victory, but good Lord, like this game was horrid for refereeing.
Yeah, I actually almost completely forgotten about that as well.
You know what reminded me? I looked at the free throws.
Oh, yeah, that'll do it. And I just looked at the foul disparity. We were called for 16. Utah was only called for 7 fouls in this entire game. And if you watch the game, that was not the case in terms of how it played out. But, I mean, winning by almost 30 cures a lot of complaints. And I forgot that I was annoyed by that as the game was going on. Anytime you can win by that much with pretty poor officiating going against you, I think that says a lot about the quality of your team, particularly in a road game against a top 25 conference opponent. Like that's just impressive.
Yeah, because you and I were back and forth, just like that's not a foul. And I think, wasn't there one play where it was like Serena Sandell borderline got shot in the middle of the court, and they're just like, ball's out of bounds.
Yeah, no, I remember what you're talking about. And yeah, I really don't know what the officials were thinking during this game. But again, it's tough to complain too much when, 71-47, like that's a pretty favorable result, I would say. But yeah. Regardless, still, I guess something worth mentioning, because at the time that the game was going on, was definitely a storyline, I felt.
It's annoying. More, but speaking of winning by nearly 30, we go on and beat BYU the very like 2 nights later, 92-65, beating them by 27. And this was probably one of the most disrespectful women's basketball performances that I've seen in quite some time by one player in particular. That's Tamira Poindexter, who ended up logging 31 minutes, 9 of 14 from the field, 5 of 10 from three, 1 of 1 on her free throws, 1 rebound, 1 assist, 2 steals, a block for 24 total points. I mean, Tamira was feeling herself in this game. And I think that, and this isn't, sort of I've always been very much let the kids play, so to speak, to steal a term from baseball, because I think it's very funny. So I am not exaggerating when I said I almost started crying laughing when on like her second to last 3-point attempt, she stuck her tongue out at the K-State bench. So this is, when I say disrespectful, I don't mean it in the literal sense. I mean it in the, wow, that's really funny, and there's nothing they could have done about it since.
Yeah, Tamira was unbelievable in this game. Her best performance in a Wildcat uniform. And I think this is what a lot of people were hoping for from her. I still think she's been really great for what we've needed from her, which is like, if we need a bucket, we can rely on her. But I mean, this game, she was just on fire from three. And like, she had a point in the first half, I think in the second quarter towards the end of it, where she just could not miss.
She had like 9 consecutive points. She had a 9-0 run by herself.
Yeah, she was unbelievable in this game. And she hit a 3 at the end of the first half, kind of right before the buzzer. And while she was shooting it, she was in the corner, and there's a courtside seat by her. And there was a BYU fan there that I think was chirping at her while she was shooting. And she made it, of course. And she turned around, she had something to say to the BYU fan as well. So Tamira, I think, was having a lot of fun this game.
Yeah. Hey, if you're going to play with swag, you got to do it. I mean, if that's who you are, that's who you are.
Especially when you can back it up. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, you can't brick that and then say something. But shut up. But Yoki played 22 minutes, 8 of 14 from the field, 3 of 3 on her free throws, got 7 total rebounds, 2 of them offensive, 1 assist, 4 steals, a block, and 2 fouls for 19 points. So pretty average Yoki performance, except for more steals than usual. Normally those are blocks. But Serena Sundell, 31 minutes, 5 of 7 from the field, 2 of 2 from 3, had 3 total rebounds, 1 of them offensive, 13 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, a turnover, and a foul for 12 total points. So a double-double and a free throw attempt away from stuffing the stat sheet, which whenever it's free throws, I do get a little bit sad that that's what's keeping them from stuffing the stat sheet.
I'm really fine counting it on that, because when I'm looking at stuff the stat sheet, I'm looking at like rebounds, assists, blocks, steals, and stuff like that. Like, okay. I guess the fact that they scored, like that's also important. But no, Serena was unbelievable in this game.
Yeah. I mean, she's really stepped into the role of, primary ball hand. I say step into, like it's her first time. She stepped back into it, and it's like she never left. But Jalen Glenn played 23 minutes, 3 of 3 from the field, 2 of 2 from 3. Both were elbow 3. Nope, 1 elbow 3 and 1 corner 3. 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal for 8 points. And then rounding out the starting lineup, Zy Walker, 28 minutes, 3 of 10 from the field, 0 of 2 from 3. 4 rebounds, 1 of them offensive, 1 assist, 2 steals, 2 blocks for 6 total points. So we win the game probably just with the top 3. Not literally, but that performance, especially by Poindexter, this very well could be the sort of jumping off point for Poindexter, because you said she's been good, and I agree. But this could be the stepping off point where it's like, okay, oh damn, she's like top 5 in the Big 12.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that we can see her kind of, yeah, like you said, use this as a jumping off point. But yeah, Jalen Glenn, perfect from the field again. I mean, she has just been automatic from three. As of late, she's shooting 41.2% from three this season, which is a nearly 10% increase from last year, where she shot 31% from three. But she's been absolutely phenomenal this year. I don't know what she did in the off season for improving her shooting, but we should have everybody be doing whatever it is she did because it worked. So, but on to the bench players now. Gisela Sanchez played 18 minutes in this one. Did go 2 of 5 from the field. All of her makes and attempts were threes.
All of them front ironed. She took our advice too literally. She took 2 steps back, not 1.
Yeah. So she did have a couple of bad shots as well. I thought did ultimately, like, she still made some buckets towards the end of the game, but kind of had a point in the game where I was a little bit frustrated with her shot selection. But they also added 3 rebounds, had an assist, 2 turnovers on a foul. So scored 6 points, a fine performance for Gisela Sanchez. Eliza Maupin, very efficient and not a lot of minutes played. She played 8 minutes, 3 of 5 from the field for 6 points, then added a rebound with 3 assists. One point, she had a really nice pass to, I believe it was Tamara Poindexter on a cut. That I was pretty impressed to see that from Eliza Maupin. Terrence Sides played 24 minutes, 1 of 6 from the field, 1 of 5 from 3, made both free throw attempts she had. So she gets 5 points and added 3 rebounds, 1 foul, 2 assists to 0 turnovers. And then that takes us to the last 2 players, Amani Lester, Kennedy Taylor, who kind of seemed to be locked in a battle for this backup center spot. Amani Lester played 7 minutes, was 2 of 3 from the field, and had 4 points. Then added a rebound, a couple of fouls, and that was all for her stats. At one point, she had a very unimpressive offensive sequence, I thought, where she really had a nice layup at one point. It was earlier in the game. I can't remember exactly when, but like, she did have a moment that I was really happy with. Defensively, she was a bit inconsistent with her positioning, but I'm also like micromanaging her at this point, I guess, like, because I'm always curious to see like how she does when she's on the floor, because most everybody else we kind of know what we're getting from them, but Amani I like to kind of watch in particular. Kennedy Taylor played 7 minutes as well, 1 of 4 from the 3, and then had 2 rebounds, 1 of them on offense, and added 2 fouls, an assist, a turnover. So just 2 points for Kennedy. She didn't really play a lot in this game compared to normal, and she also didn't really play a lot until later in the game as well, which was, I thought, a little bit unusual. So I don't know if that means anything, or if it's just the way that Coach Mitty just decided to run the rotation. But oh well.
Yeah. So really, really impressive trip to Utah. And then K-State's also having to, they're going to be back home for the next 2 games. Both of them are the Arizona schools. Arizona State coming to Bramlage Thursday and Sunday, January 16th and 19th. And then there are just a few to sort of circle here for the upcoming future. There's one that I wouldn't be surprised if they flexed it to like a big boy network, and that is the matchup up against TCU, who's currently ranked 11th in the country. Like, if both teams stay on current trajectory, they're probably going to get flexed to a big boy network, even though it is on a Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, that's a massive game coming up. But really, this month of February is going to be huge, and it kind of starts at the end of January. But I mean, like, we can just run down this like upcoming slate once we get past the Arizona schools and a trip to Colorado. There's going to be really there's a gauntlet is what K-State women's basketball is about to face. Because they're starting out this gauntlet, I think, with a matchup against Iowa State. That's January 30th. That's a Thursday evening, and that's going to be on ESPN. Not Plus, not U, not Two. That is on proper, real ESPN. And that's going to be a titanic matchup between Ayoka Lee and Audie Crooks. And I think that even though Iowa State has not been as impressive as we thought they were going to be, I still think that they could provide some issues for us. And they're also going to be at a point where they are really needing to basically not quite win out, but just about, if they want to stay in the Big 12 title race, which should be their goal. But that's going to be a tough game. Follow that up with a trip to KU just 3 days later. Then, of course, you have that matchup that Ace was just talking about, hosting TCU. TCU has been fantastic this season. Luckily, we just have them here in Manhattan, but that's going to be a really tough game to face them. But then you follow that up with Oklahoma State, who we really didn't talk about them much in the preseason, but they have been the surprise of the year. Oklahoma State has been phenomenal this season. They just went and beat West Virginia, who was kind of up there with K-State and TCU as being the main contenders.
Darlings. Yeah, they were they were up there with the preseason darlings, like you were saying. And Oklahoma State's only loss this year is a head scratcher against the Richmond Spiders. Okay. And then at home against KU. Yeah.
Two weird games to lose given some of their quality wins. Like they beat Baylor at Baylor by 23.
Yeah. Like they dog walked Baylor in Waco. So Oklahoma State's going to be scarier than we thought.
Yeah. That is a good team. And also that is a team that's familiar with K-State as well. Their head coach, J.C. Hoyt, she was on staff here at K-State for quite a while with Jeff Mittie before she went to UMKC and then went to Oklahoma State. So, I mean, like that, not an easy game at all. We also only get them in Stillwater. If we could get out of Stillwater with a win, that would be I'd be over the moon if we could do that. But honestly, I mean, that game is looking like a coin flip right now, I think. I'm not feeling great about it. Followed up with the game against Cincinnati, a game against UCF. Then you get West Virginia on a Monday at 1 p.m. and you're playing them on Big Boy Fox as well. So just kind of a random matchup to have on a weekday at 1. But West Virginia with J.J. Quinterly. Quinterly is fantastic as well. Like, take some time to watch West Virginia play. Because Quinterly is really entertaining. I think Quinterly is kind of like Final Form Zy Walker, I think, is a good way to describe her. Probably a bit faster, honestly. But
and she'd be my pick for Conference Player of the Year at this point.
Yeah, I think so. Because, like, I mean, you'd love to say Serena Sundell or Ayoka Lee, but unfortunately, K-State has too many incredible players, and they just cannibalize themselves. So nobody can be the Player of the Year. But we'll take all the first-team spots, though. So that's okay.
Yeah, and then wrapping up the schedule versus KU, that's a game Connor and I will both be at, up against Baylor, and then wrapping up the season after a weird 2-week break. I guess it is only 1 week. I forget that February is a short month, but up against Iowa State in Ames. So
yeah,
that's kind of a brutal stretch, especially because KU still, I believe they still have their post player that gave even Ayoka Lee fits last year. Of course, you get Audie Crooks, and TCU has proven themselves to be legitimate. Oklahoma State is frustratingly good at this point. I mean, once February hits, that's when it's time to lock in for the Mini-Cats, because I think that even though Iowa State hasn't been as good as advertised, if you do look at their losses, there are a few head scratchers like the Northern Illinois loss, but everything else makes a lot of sense because they kind of Pete Hughes Batcats themselves. They lost to number 4 South Carolina 76-36. I don't blame them. I do not blame people for losing to the WNBA juniors team, losing to Iowa by 6 on the road, getting dog walked by UConn again. That's fine. Oklahoma State, who's been a surprise, and then losing to Utah in Ames. But I mean, you look at their losses and you're like, yeah, UNI is the head scratcher, but everything else is like, oh wait, those are actually good teams.
Yeah. And getting Iowa State twice, particularly, I don't like that we're ending the season with that game in Ames. That's the sort of game that if Iowa State is able to put things together like they probably will, because Iowa State teams tend to be a team that is peaking late in the season, at least from what I've noticed in the past.
And we've been the exact opposite.
Yeah, so Iowa State, they could very well be a tough out at the end of the year. And also I'll add our last 2 games, that February 24th against Baylor and that March 2nd at Iowa State. Those are both on ESPN2 as well. So we'll be getting some exposure for those games. But luckily we were able to beat Baylor while we were shorthanded last year. But I mean, this is not the Baylor of old where they were just an unstoppable force under Kim Mulkey. But this is still a really good Baylor team. And they're going to be competing for the Big 12 title. They're 4-1 in conference play right now. So they're in that 3-way tie for second with Oklahoma State and Utah. So, I mean, this thing is far from over, and I think we've honestly had a pretty easy schedule so far.
To this point.
Yeah, so, but going forward, we're going to start to get some pretty dicey games, I think.
I still do think that we got a relatively favorable draw with the schedule, because the 2 away games that scare me most are West Virginia and Oklahoma State. And I would take that over a trip to Waco.
Yeah, I'd take that over Waco. I'd take it over Fort Worth this year, honestly.
If anything, I would avoid Fort Worth because I don't want my eyes to bleed.
Fair enough. But it would definitely not be that's definitely not somewhere I want to be playing this year with just how great TCU has been, which I don't know if they're going to be one-year wonders or they're going to be back next year. All I know is that they've got a lot of seniors on this team. So I guess if they hit the portal especially hard, then maybe they'll be back on top next year. But, I mean, this year kind of seems like the year for TCU. Of course, having Sedona Prince and Madison Connor, the big name, of course, Haley Van Lith. Like, that's a super, super, super talented team. So then the Titanic matchup coming up, Bramlage Coliseum. So if you can get out to Bramlage, and if not, get ESPN Plus. Don't cancel it just because the other basketball team is bad.
Wait, there's another basketball team?
Those are the rumors I'm hearing, at least. But
no, I don't think that's true.
We'll get ESPN Plus to support the women's basketball team of Womanhattan. And
T-shirt coming soon. But you have any final notes, Connor?
No, nothing else.
All right. Well, if that's the case, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. If you want to follow or contact the show, you can follow us just about anywhere at Aggieville Alleycats. And if you want to email us, we're AggieVilleAlleycats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on a more personal note, I am at ACEdward00.
I am at Connor Baltazar, capital C, capital B.
And if you want to support the show financially, please be sure to check out the official Aggieville Alleycats merch store, link found in our podcast and Twitter bio. But most importantly, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. Stay safe, Alleycats.